get ready to set sail. I'm Marisa Vedra, and thank you for joining us on CBS News Chicago as we get ready to kick off the 115th race to Mackinac Island. We have team coverage getting you the best view of these vessels as they depart from Chicago, headed for the island off of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. We have our resident historian, Chris Havermill. He's up in CBS Skywatch giving us that bird's eye view. Our Jamaica Ponder's on dry land. She's with the good people of the Chicago Yacht Club, but we'd like to kick it off with David Yeomans. He's in the First Alert Weather Center for a look at the all-important race weekend forecast. David.
Hey, Marie, thanks so much. Of course, these sailors rely so heavily on the weather, and the good news, even though we've got some periods of storms, even though we have a lot of humidity, the wind will generally be in their favor. The weekend forecast in the Chicago area looks hot, humid, and a few periods of storms. 90 tomorrow as you're getting ready for the big launch midday. Sunday, 95 after mainly morning storms. Some of those could be severe. If you're out there on the lakeshore this afternoon, temperatures are warm. It's 83 at O'Hare, feeling like 85 as humidity has returned. We do have light east winds, though, in the city, pushing up some 70s to Calumet City, Chatham, and Gary. A little bit warmer away from the water, of course, in the mid-80s. The radar is clear. The winds relatively light overall. They're actually blowing down the lake in this afternoon summer lake breeze, but by tomorrow morning, they actually should spin around to south to north and really be in a favorable direction for boaters. Even though the winds will be favorable tomorrow morning as we get sailing late tomorrow night, the first of several rounds of severe storms may impact us out on Lake Michigan. I'll time out the entire weekend's winds and storm probabilities coming up.
I know that it's so important and they're paying close attention. Thank you for that update, David.
Sure.
People out on Mackinac Island have even more reason to celebrate these days, recently being named the third best island in the continental U.S. by Travel and Leisure. Pretty exciting. No wonder sailors have been making this trip to the historic island since 1898. This is the oldest annual freshwater race in the world. The original race had just 5 boats. It has now evolved into a world-class sporting event. This year, a whopping 256 boats from all over the country are ready to set sail in just a few minutes. We want to go up now to our expert on truly all modes of transportation. That's Chris Havermill. He's up at CBS Skywatch. And how does it look up there, Chris? You got a really nice day.
Oh, this is my favorite time of year, Marie, and I'll tell you right now what we're looking at here is it's going to be a nice clean start, a very slow. You can see her sails are up. Everybody else is checking in with the pin boat, and they're going past. They actually come within hailing distance. There are no radio check-ins here, so you have 2 boats that are standing off the mouth of Monroe Harbor, about a mile or so, and you've got a pin boat, which is closest to the harbor entrance. You've got a signal boat, which is further out. You go to the pin boat, you show your sailboard, you check in, you are hailed audibly. Then that means you've checked in. There's no radio check-ins whatsoever. Then you get back to your place, and once about 10 minutes to the start comes up, there will be a visual representation. A visual pennant is going to go up to let you know your section is about to start. And this year we've got pink pennants on the back stays for Section 1, or actually Section 3. They go in reverse order. Section 3, Section 2, Section 1. We're looking for the pink pennants first, blue pennants second, and then the yellow pennants third. So there's some really interesting boating stories that are going on out here. We're going to see the Albatross in Section 1, the last section to go. They were actually the cruising overall winner last year. And we've got Eagle 1 and White Hawk that they were kind of vying for line honors, crossing the finish line up, getting into the Mackinac Island there and getting that cannon shot. And White Hawk actually edged out Eagle 1 in the last stretch there. So there's a lot of great stories that are going on out here. We've got a lot of new sailors that are doing this for the first time. We got a lot of new boats that are out here, and it's really great to see, because that's exactly what the Chicago Yacht Club has been trying to do since they were founded back in 1875. And did you know that this race actually started with just a couple of guys and a couple of boats that were going up against each other? Both of those boats were built in Racine in 1890. So 1896, they both got plopped into the water, and the 2 guys between the Siren and the Venena, they first raced each other across to Michigan City. And the Venena won, and the siren protested, saying, my sails are too old and they weren't designed for this and blah, blah, blah. So they said, okay, in 1897, they came back at it, raced up to Milwaukee. It was so foggy, nobody knows if the race was even concluded because both of the sloops went off course. Then in 1898, a regatta between those two that the Venena swept all three. They came back, added 3 more schooners, and guess what? Then the Mac was born all the way, the full 333-mile distance to get up to Mackinac Island. So there's a lot of history here. It's beautiful weather out here. Folks have had a great time at the Chicago Yacht Club here, and we're looking forward to a wonderful start coming up. So we will we'll see that, and the boats, the cruisers getting lined up here in just a few minutes because they're getting ready to go.
What a legacy from those first early sailors, Chris. And you've got one of the best views in the house, I have to say. Thank you for bringing it to us from above. We'll check back in with you in just a bit. As Chris mentioned, every year it's the Chicago Yacht Club that organizes the race to Mackinac Island. And that is where we find our Jamaica Ponder. She is there with the race chair for this year. And that's the second best view in the house, Jamaica.
It's a beautiful view, Marie. I mean, you can see all these gorgeous boats behind me. We have Winsall Danny with us. He is this year's race chair, and he's going to answer the plethora of questions that I have about how this race operates and who is racing, because that's one of the first things that I wonder is who's on these boats out there?
Yeah, so we have a total of about 2,200 racers out there this year, and it's 252 boats. And the really cool thing about it, and something that we're really emphasizing, is first-timers, right? Like, we think it's a responsibility of the race, it's a responsibility of the club to bring people to the sport. We've always done a great job of celebrating our old goats, and those are people who have done 25 races.
Wow.
We even have, I think, 2 people in this race who have done, or this is their 50th race this year. Yeah, crazy. But this year we set out first timers, and so about 10% of the boats are first time boats, which we love, and then about 20% of the sailors are first time sailors. And now they got a special trophy for the fastest first time boat, and we're doing a brunch. We got temporary tattoos that say "My First Mac" on them. Yeah, we're doing
Okay, you get me one of those after this.
You 100%. You got it. 100%.
So you got to tell me, being a first timer, does it change any of like the racing conditions or stipulations? Are you in a different sort of boat, if in a different heat?
Nope. You're against everyone else. I mean, I think the important thing to think about is that I think it's easy to have like the mentality that yachting is someone with a martini on the stern of a boat. It's not that at all. It's very athletic, and one of the reasons I love it is it's a team sport, and it's like a ballet when done correctly. I mean, there's a boat out here. It's Andrews 80. It has 22 people on the boat, and when they do a maneuver, every one of those 22 people has a role and something to hit. So if you're a first timer in a boat with a team, you're relying on that team to really bring you along. When, like, I think we're expecting storms on Saturday night, right into Sunday morning. Like, if I've trained with my team, which I have, I trust it, right? And even if I have several first timers on it, we train for the race and we have safety standards for the race, and you just lean into those things.
How are you getting people to get into yachting? How are you getting people to get into this sport and to boating and to sailing? What are you doing to make it attractive to people who haven't tried it out before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. And again, here at the Chicago Yacht Club, we do things like Crew U, which is where we bring people, we advertise it, and I encourage people to do this every spring. You come to the Yacht Club, you take classes in boating, we put you on boats, we get you one of these 40, 60-foot boats, and we put you on the boat, take you out there, learn to sail. We try to get you on a crew on Wednesday nights, which is a little more casual sailing, and then we try to get you from there up to, Saturday weekend sailing, and hopefully go to the Mac someday.
That's fantastic that you have an entire infrastructure to get people into it. So it's not really just a pipe dream. You can really learn throughout the year, and this is a possibility.
Oh, 100%.
So can you talk to me about what the increase in participation that you've seen this year?
Yeah, so this year we've gone up by about 10 or 12 boats versus a year ago. Now, what we're trying to do next year is the 150th anniversary of the club.
Wow!
Yeah. So we're really excited about that, and we're aiming for actually 400 boats next year.
Where are you going to put all those boats?
I said it to the universe. I can't believe I said it, right? I'm on record now as saying that. So that presents really a logistical challenge here in Chicago, and then up in Mackinac Island also, which is a small harbor.
It's tiny.
Yeah. So we've done it before. Our biggest race ever is 462 boats in 2008. Wow. That was the 100th anniversary. 100th running of the race in 2008. So we know that we can do it. Now we're going to go again. We think it's our responsibility to bring people to this race because this race is awesome. We're going to go to yacht clubs around the Great Lakes, yacht clubs around the country, anywhere we can, and talk to groups of boats to come here and help them with the logistics of bringing your boat from New York through the Erie Canal, through the Great Lakes to get here to do the race next summer. So
now, is that typical that people are traveling with their boats to be able to participate in the race?
They can. I mean, we certainly we've had boats come from as far away as Hong Kong before. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, 80-foot boat from Hong Kong. It's pretty cool, and that's quite an operation, right? They got to put it on a big ship, get it across the ocean, then they got to put it on a truck to get it to the middle of the country, then they got to put it all together, and then they got to take it apart. And
Right, because they can't just sail it here.
No, right, yeah. And they have like semi-trailers following the boat with parts and stuff inside of it, so it's really quite an operation for them to do that.
And I'd just like to hear you talk a little bit more about how this really is a sport and the athleticism behind it, because I don't know if folks who aren't familiar with boating, if they know what sort of athleticism is required of folks. This is not easy work.
No, it's not. So I think what people maybe don't recognize if you haven't sailed a lot is that, number one, boats angle over. When the wind hits the boat, it heels over is what we call it, right? So you're working on an angle the whole time. You're climbing uphill or falling downhill the whole time when you're on a boat, number one. Number two is like the loads are impressive. Again, think about an 80-foot boat. I think the mast is 110 feet tall on that boat, so it has giant sails on it. And even though you have a mechanical advantage, right, the force of the wind increases with the square of the wind speed. So it increases, exponentially.
Right.
And so from a 5-knot wind to a 10-knot wind, that's a doubling of the wind speed, but quadrupling of the load.
Whoa.
So you need those machines to help you to do it. And a lot of these boats, well, they all have winches to help, right? But some of them have coffee grinder winches, so you can get two big burly guys on it. Coffee grinders. Yeah, they're called.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that is quite a visual, and we're going to be back with more. So don't you go anywhere, because soon we're going to have you chat with our guy in the sky, Chris Havermill. So I can't wait either, because I know you're a fan. But we'll toss it back to y'all in the studio for now.
Jamaica, thank you so much. So interesting. All the way from Hong Kong, these boats and this interest, it's incredible. We'll check back in with you in just a bit, but we want to show you what these cruising division racers will be competing for. This is stunning. The White Hawk Trophy. This is the second year the prize will be handed out after being donated by Marjorie and Peter Thornton before last year's race. The detail on that is just beautiful. The boat that is looking to defend its title this year, the Albatross, a Solaris 142, owned by Fernando Assassins out of Miami, Florida. And then you heard Chris Havermill talking a little bit about the story around setting sail tomorrow. The final is looking for a repeat performance in the racing division. Last year, it was owner John Desmond's first time entering the race, but they still managed to come away with the Mackinac Trophy for first overall. If you'd like to keep track of the boats throughout the weekend, there's a really handy website on which to do that. You're looking at a live picture of it right now. To find this, go to cycracetomackinac.com. Here you can see live updates, and it'll give you all the information for each of the boats throughout the weekend, whether they're smooth sailing or battling with some of the storms that we may see starting tomorrow. We want to go back up to Chris Havermill. He's in CBS Skywatch, and I'm looking at my clock here. Just about a minute and a half, Chris, until this first cruising division hits the road, if you will.
Indeed, a minute and a half. The 10-minute signal was already given here, so about 8.5 minutes ago. Everybody's getting in line now, and they're going to be crossing between signal boat here. And while we're waiting, let's give you a little bit of a rundown of some of the boats that are here in Section 3. You're going to be seeing the Endeavor, Endless Summer, Foray, Fortunate Son, Fuzzy Logic. Some of these names are amazing. Intangible, Jasmine, Joint Venture, Juliana, Cuddy's Ark, that's always a favorite, Mise en Place, Sarah, Bernadette 2, and Voyager. So they're going to be coming across the line here shortly. And they're a mix of these high-performance boats that are built for fun and also for a little bit of competition here. Some of these boats are built in France, some were designed in France and built in the United States, some were built in Germany, in the good old USA. So you can see here as we're getting closer to the start, all those the cruisers, we've got 13 in this first group. Everybody is starting to get closer and closer. So while everybody's kind of clustering up, let's talk a little bit about sails.
Chris, I want to ask a quick question of you, if you have me. First, I want to address, I know this signal is a little choppy, but it's because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're close to the lake, so we can get these great pictures of these boats before they set sail.
Yeah, we're close to the lake, and the thing is, we are on lake side of a whole bunch of really tall buildings.
I bet.
So as we're circling around out here in the warmer weather, helicopter does not perform as well as the weather gets warmer. We have to keep moving. So as we're moving, occasionally you go behind a building, you get a little bit of a building shadow here. So we will endeavor, as we're getting right now the start going, we'll go ahead and get a little bit of altitude and make sure that we stay out from the building shadow here. So Our receive side will hopefully pick us up just a little bit better. We'll gain a bunch of altitude here for you so we can get a good view of this nice clean start. And as you can see here, off to Mackinac we go. Yes, indeed. So we've got ourselves a good solid start here. It's a in Chicago, but as you heard David Yeoman say, winds are going to be on the light side, so you're really going to have to work this mixture of wind here. Right now, everybody's going to be heading upwind into the wind here, and later on, it's going to switch around over the next day or so, and you're going to get it over the stern here. So as you work it with the sails, basically what sails do is they create a pressure zone there. If you imagine an airplane wing and you just stand it up on end, it is going to actually catch air inside there and inflate to an airfoil. So what it's going to do is it's going to force air to go the long way over the inflated or the puffed outside there where you're catching the wind, and it creates a low pressure zone in front, a high pressure zone in back, and you're actually being pulled along, not necessarily blown along. These aren't pond racers like you had when you were a kid where you had to set the sails on. You're actually working it between the foresail and the mainsail here. So your jib out front, your mainsail in the back, you go ahead and squeeze the air down in between there, and you jibe and tack back and forth in order to catch and work that wind as best you can in order to keep wind in your sails. If you look really close on some of these, in some of the pictures that we're giving you here, you may see little streamers that are coming off the back end of the sails there, or even at the midpoint of the sails. Those are called telltales, and that's where, you know, the old saying the telltale signs come from. And basically what that is it's telling you that you're actually aerodynamic. You're getting air streaming off there. So if your telltales are streaming, easy for me to say, and they're not luffing or flapping around, you're doing a good job and your sails are in trim. So you're going to have sail changes. You're going to, as you're going up the lake, you're getting into different conditions, whether you are in a little bit of a squally situation like we had at the start of the racing division last year. It went from a day like today to rain blowing sideways, and it got quite sporty out there for a little while. And then they got to the top, the head of the lake, and you get around the Fox and Beaver Islands, and the wind kind of died out. So you went back to single-digit wind speeds, kind of like what we're seeing right now. So we're off and racing, we're off and cruising, we're off and moving. We're going to Mackinac. We'll see you up there, but it's going to be kind of a chore to get what wind and work with what wind you have here as we're getting this this start for the first section, Section 3 of the cruising division. So a beautiful start here. Not exactly booming up the lake right now, but we'll keep an eye on things. Hopefully our signal is straightened out. We've gained a little bit of altitude for you.
It looks really good, Chris, and not only could you give us your sailing expertise, but give us the origin story of various colloquialisms. So you educate us every day. We're so appreciative for it. Time right now is 3:03:40, so we've been underway for 3 minutes and 40-some seconds. Chris, we'll check back in with you for another picture from above in just a little bit. He mentioned this. Chris was talking about last year's situation where it was not smooth sailing for everybody on the water. A lack of wind really made it a long and drawn-out race for some sailors. More than 24 boats were stalled, a lot of them moving very slowly, if at all, in northern Lake Michigan. Really nothing they could do but wait for that breeze to pick up, since they would have been disqualified if they had turned on their motors. So you really have to work with whatever weather Mother Nature is giving you. We are hoping that there won't be a lack of wind this year, but let's check in with the man who knows. First Alert meteorologist David Yeomans. With the conditions that these mariners are going to be facing, and very different, it sounds like, David, across the next few days.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to go from really calm winds under 10 knots for the next 12 hours for those who have already taken off, to periods of honestly really intense, and thinking of me being out there, scary thunderstorms, mainly overnight. The water temperatures are quite pleasant, especially near the Chicago shoreline in the lower 70s. Up near the mid and north part of the lakes, in the middle of the lake, it's more like the mid 60s, so a little bit chilly out there, helping to keep these air temperatures down for the sailors the next couple days. Waves, though, are really quite low and light with the light winds that we have. Tomorrow, if you're thinking about heading out there to the shore to watch watch the main race begin, or for the boaters out there themselves, it will be warm and humid. I'm not too worried about storms beginning yet by that 11 a.m. start time, but we will have a 30% chance of storms a bit later in the day. So let's zoom out to the whole lake. Let me spell out the winds and, first of all, the rain and thunderstorms all the way through Monday morning. Here we are tomorrow morning. Nice start to the race as south winds are pushing us upwind. Now look, by Saturday evening, though, the first of these northwesterly impulses, big disturbance in the atmosphere, is racing through Wisconsin. With it, late Saturday night into early Sunday morning, what could be a really big complex of strong to severe thunderstorms. You know, when these storms create massive amounts of gusty blowing winds on their front end, over the water there's less friction for that wind to slow down, things like big buildings or your house. So the wind speeds can actually be stronger for the boaters. Basically, we're going to go from a south wind to a really strong west wind late Saturday night as these storms arrive. And needless to say, these sailors who are experts at this will need to have their lightning safety in mind and also their visibility overnight with, of course, lights on. Into Sunday morning, that first wave of rain passes. So as we're making our way up the lake, the warm, humid air kicks back in, south winds continue to push us, and on our extended range model, which can see all the way through Sunday into Monday, overall these south winds continue to push us up. Notice as that warm, humid air blows over 60-something degree water, we're seeing what looks like a lot of lake fog from the central part into the northern part of Lake Michigan. Late Sunday evening, another round of storms develop for those still a little farther south near Chicago. But Sunday night into Monday morning, as many are getting up toward the finish line, it looks like the rain should be avoiding our area. Again, a big finger of lake fog may create visibility problems, so maintain your visibility out there on the lake. As far as the winds go, quite light right now, but by tomorrow morning's launch for the competitive group, south winds are blowing 10 to 20 in the city and a little bit stronger than that with the lack of friction over the lake. Here comes that big complex of storms with strong west winds up to 50 miles an hour possible late Saturday night. Once that passes, though, again, the south winds return. Sunday, we're just getting pushed up the lake by these 10 to 20 knot winds, and I don't see much disruption in terms of additional storms on the northern section of the lake by Monday morning. So your 7-day forecast, of course, back here in town. It looks warm and humid through the weekend with a couple rounds of storms. Weather alert again on Monday, not only Sunday, for another very hot day with a severe storm risk. For those driving back from Mackinac or maybe sailing back early next week, the weather does eventually get a little bit cooler and scattered storms will be waning. Back to you.
David, I have to put you on the spot. I know you are a budding sailor yourself. Are you feeling inspired?
I'm feeling jealous, honestly. You know, put a weatherman out in a sailboat in a complex of severe thunderstorms. That sounds like a nightmare for many. It sounds kind of like a dream for me, Marie. I don't know.
All right, well, we've got a year to plan ahead for next year. We'll try to make that happen.
Let me start learning.
Thank you, David. We want to go back out now to the Chicago Yacht Club, where Jamaica Ponder is talking to the chair this year about not only all the people that are racing. I'm fascinated, Jamaica, talking about how many new sailors that we have out on the water this year. They have to be so brave and also so excited.
I imagine that they are. You know what, Wynn, would you like to speak on how the new sailors, how they might be feeling, any sort of anticipation?
Well, I talked to one this morning. Maggie Gallagher is on Endeavor. It's one of my friends. He's a rear commodore of the yacht club, and he's out there and he has his daughter who's a middle school age kid. And I would say she's excited and nervous. Yeah. And hard to tell the difference between the two of them. You know, but again, she trusts her team. Her dad's out there. She has a world champion sailor on the boat, and so she's.
What is the age range of these sailors?
So we go from, I don't have the exact one, but it's about 13, 14 years old up to 70s. We've had people as old as 80 in the race. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, as long as they can stay safe, well, it's great.
Can you tell me who won last year?
So last year, the Solaris won. You probably got the name of the Solaris that won last year. But the Line Honors winner last year was Whitehawk, and we're expecting Whitehawk to do really well again this year. We're talking about how light the winds are here, but actually Whitehawk is, we have these, the software packages that help us predict when the boats are going to finish. Whitehawk right now is predicted to finish at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, which would be by several hours the earliest we've ever had a boat. So again, I think your meteorologist talked about it. Winds are light right now. The angle's a little funny right now. It's kind of hard to get into the wind. But by the time we get to tomorrow, they're really going to be moving north really quickly. So the cruising fleet's going to get there earlier than they ever have is what we think is going to happen.
I want to hear you speak more in depth about exactly what the wind means and the weather means and what's happening out there. So I want to get you in a conversation with Chris Habermel because he's in the sky right now. Can we get the two of them in a 2-box so they can chat about what's happening? I'm not hearing Chris in my ear. Let's see.
Hey, Wynn,
There we
do you
go.
hear me all right?
Hey, Chris.
What's up, Chris?
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Hey, brother.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Jamaica. Nice to see you.
Hey.
Yeah, we got a beautiful
Yeah.
grandstand view
Yeah,
up
looking
here.
great up there. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. I
we're
was
waiting
here
on
talking
the
about,
second section
you know,
to
the
come
wind's
up
a
here
little
with
bit-
all our blue pennants here, so it looks like we're going to get another on-time start here shortly.
Yeah, I would expect all three starts to go on time today with the weather conditions that we have. You know, we were expecting the wind to be a little bit more out of the east than it is. Even at this morning's skipper meeting where, you know, we have a meteorologist of our own who comes in, we're expecting the winds to be a little bit more easterly, even southeasterly right now. So it's a little bit of a surprise that they've held on northeast for as long as they have. But, you know, we're expecting the wind to veer, sort of go to the right a little bit here, and eventually for the cruising fleet to be able to put their spinnakers up, the colorful sails that you've seen before.
Yeah, hoping to see the spinnakers come out. That'd be really nice. It's always colorful to see that. Try and work the wind mix that you've got out here, and which not much of a mix. It's pretty, I guess the technical term is lame right now.
Yeah.
We're getting
the
our second
wind's pretty
section up
even
here.
right now,
Chika,
actually.
Freedom, Halcyon 2, Jug Band, Liberté, Michaela, Olivia Grace, Quiet Refuge, Roxy, Runaway, Serenity, and Vogue getting across the line here now as we're getting into the next section. They go about every 10 minutes here with our cruising division.
Yep, that's correct. So you'll get a 10-minute gun, and then 4 minutes before the start to get a preparatory signal, and then 1 minute before they get another signal, and then they're off at that point. So that's that we roll that, and tomorrow we'll roll that about 20 times in the racing fleet, actually.
Well, Wynn, I really want to commend you and the Chicago Yacht Club on really emphasizing safety. I know that this late part of this last month, last part of June, you had man overboard drills. You take that very seriously. There's a complete set of safety rules that everybody has to follow and has to sign off on before they even make entry into this race here. So hats off to you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate that. Those are called the Chicago Mackinac Safety Regulations. We call them the CMSRs, and actually we started developing those around 2000 to 2008, and they became actually the model for U.S. sailing and the U.S. sailing safety regulations. So we've led in a bunch of areas in this race. Safety is certainly one of those. Another one is tracking. I don't know how much you've talked about the trackers and the fact that every boat's got a GPS tracker on it. You're able to go to cycracemackinac.com, click on follow the race, and you'll see the boats go up the lake. But we were the first major race to have 100% tracking of the fleet. So, you know, that's another area that we lead in here. And that certainly adds to the safety too, right? We're able to see if a boat stops. We're able to see if a boat goes into port and doesn't tell us about it. So we really are proud of that.
And
Thank you for noticing that, Chris.
That is really amazing too. I really have to say that out of all of the websites that I've seen that follow races, yours is the most comprehensive. And for whether you're a professional sailor or just a layman, you're just a weekend warrior or what have you, you can go on there, you can follow the action, you can see where the boats are, you go on your YB tracker, your yellow brick, and it's just a little palm-sized GPS tracker, and you can see, and you can click on each one of those pieces of confetti that's spread out there over the waves there, and you can see.
Yep.
You can see the rum line where you're going to be going if you're going as straight as possible, if it's going to be a rum line type of race, or whether people are really going to have to work at going up there. And you can also see where the wind dies out, because you get a whole big cluster of boats that are just kind of laying there. We saw that last year.
Yeah, you absolutely can see the boats run up on each other in that situation 100%. The tracker's great that way. We actually have a new system this year also where we've set gates on the course, so at different points in the lake, and you can time splits like you might in a marathon of miles. See when boats pass each other, see who's going faster from point A to point B along the race. So that's a cool additional thing that we're doing.
That is, and you've got your race notifications. It's very user-friendly for all the entrants here. You've made it as streamlined and efficient as possible, and it's really a user-friendly type of application that you can kind of get into it. You can see, you can network with all your buddies. We've got, of course, we haven't really touched on the island goats out here. I think a couple of years ago, we had one fellow who had done, I believe, 65 Max. he first came out in the early 50s out here. He was in his early 90s.
Chris, I'm back. I'm back
Pretty,
to ask some more questions and to interrupt this wonderful conversation the two of you were having. I feel so sorry, but I have a couple more things that I just have to ask Linda. Is that all right? Thanks. Well, okay. All right, so I think I lost Chris, but I wanted to make sure that we got through a couple more things that were just on my mind about what's happening on the boats, because we know who's out there, but what is the experience like? How long is the journey?
You know, it depends on the year and it depends on the weather, how long the journey is, 100%. Like this year's going to be quicker. Like it said, the first boats are expected to be early Sunday morning, which is unheard of. Our routing software is telling us that the fastest racing boats might be 25, 26 hours, which is incredibly fast. But if I've got to paint a picture of this race, you start here in Chicago. By Saturday night, you see the fireworks off in Milwaukee, which is beautiful. You catch the right race, and you see the Milky Way in the middle of, you see meteor showers. It's incredible.
Wow.
And then the dunes pop out in the Michigan shore, and the lighthouses. It's poetic. You go through Gray's Reef, where freighters come through at the same time with you. You see the Mackinac Bridge in the distance, and you end up at the little charming Mackinac Island. You know, it's poetry. There's no other offshore race like it in the world. There's lots of races that start in one city, open water, end in another city. There's lots of races that follow land the whole way, but there really isn't another race like this.
It's so wonderful that we're out here, and I'm really happy that we're getting to see them from the sky. I mean, we're not seeing it as well as our viewers, but I can only imagine that all those sails on the water is absolutely a beautiful sight. So we'll be back with more, because I want to know what they eat on board. I want to know how they get along with each other. So we will be back with more questions, but for right now, we're going to send it back to you, Marie.
All right, Jamaica, thank you so much. I want to know that too, so we'll get back to you in a minute. If we can, let's go back up to Chris Habermill in Skywatch. Chris, I'm a bit of a novice, admittedly, to the race to Mackinac, so I'm really enjoying this and learning a lot. Fascinated to hear, it's 3:17 right now, so at 3:20 is that third launch that we're going to see today, is that right? And can you explain for me and our viewers at home who might be new to this, that all these different launch times are the different boats that are all different sizes, and so that's how they're sort of ranked into these launch times, and that also, I understand, translates to the number of crew on board. I'm seeing that they have crew numbers between 2 to 22 on some of their biggest boats.
Yes. Yeah, you've got double-handed boats all the way to these large crews that have worked together for a long time, and a lot of the that are out here is kind of a mix of old and new. You've got sailors that have done the Mac before. You've got folks that have signed on to the crew this time around for this run up the lake. And so it's a learning experience for everybody, and it's a great team event, as you've heard over and over. And yes, you notice that we're coming up on the start of the first section, which is actually the third to go. So this will be section 1, flying the yellow pennant off the backstay, including the Albatross, which was the overall first place cruising winner and winner of the White Hawk Trophy last year. Andari, Cherry Bomb, Dakota, Eagle 1, and looks like Jay Hawker, Kona, Reflection, Schadenfreude. My German background helped me with that one. Seawolf, Sequel, and White Hawk. And probably the biggest the catch that you see there, rigged there off to the right side of your screen there, that is the White Hawk. And the White Hawk and Eagle 1, they were kind of neck and neck, if you will. They were Eagle 1 was in the lead, led all the way up the lake, with White Hawk kind of nipping at her heels the entire time, and it wasn't until right before getting the cannon shot right there off of Mackinac Island that the White Hawk took over and edged right back there. But it's a good, fun, serious time for everybody, as everybody's kind of getting ready to go. So we're seeing the section 1 kind of getting ready to go across the line here. Let's talk a little bit more. You know, you've got different types of sail technology out there. It's basically where aerodynamics meets hydrodynamics. So not only are you working it above, but also below the waves. Your hull design, your keel design, how to counterweight the boat, not only topside, as you heard Wynn saying, when you start to heel over, you have to get over on the other side to counterbalance it, so the entire crew goes to the high end of the boat in order to keep you kind of on some semblance of a keel there and going the right direction. It has to do with direction. It doesn't really have to do with the boat tipping over at all. It has to do with you keeping into the wind that you're working with. Wind blows across the sails, and that creates lift. Lift creates a sideways force and a small forward force on the boat, trimming the sails up. And I was talking about the telltales before. Efficiently produces the most forward force and the least resistance. So if you're in trim right there, it's a thing of beauty. The keel or the centerboard, which is down below the water, it counters that side force in the wind, and it's weighted, it's dynamically shaped, because otherwise you're just going to drift off and just go with the wind no matter what. So you have parts of these boats, the design that is working, the hull design and the keel design below and on the water, and then you've got the sail design up above with a whole bunch of experience at trimming sails. There's some novice ways to do it, and you can see when a sail is not necessarily in trim, and you can see from a distance when they're actually running in trim. And there's different points of sail where you're onto the wind or slightly off the wind. You're head on. If you're head on into the wind, you're in irons. That's not kind of the place to be, because that's kind of a no sail where you're not really doing any work with your sails. Close hauled on a port or a starboard tack, and basically when you start talking about tacking, tacking means the wind on a port tack is the wind is coming over the port side. If you're on a starboard tack, the wind is coming over the starboard side. And basically what you're doing when you're tacking is turning the bow through the wind, and when you're jibing, you're turning the stern through the wind. There'll be a quiz on this later. I'm going to hold you to that. Anyway, close hauled on a port or starboard tack, the jib and the mainsail are close into the wind. They're close into the boat there. A close reach, port or starboard, about 45 degrees off center. When you start really working wind that's coming back from behind you, you could do 90 degrees to the wind and do a beam reach where you're actually getting pushed along as well as being pulled. Broad reach where you can actually pull that big boom all the way around about 120 degrees and really make a run for it. There is 180 degrees to the wind where it's blowing from the backside and you are just smoking up the lake. Or you could just glass out and sit there when the wind dies out. And you want to be careful too that you don't get downwind to somebody else, because they actually blank you out, and you could go off wind there when somebody cuts in front of you. So there's a whole bunch of technical things that have to go on. You have crew coordination in order to get those sails up and trimmed most efficiently. And of course, when you start getting into more heavy weather, then you got a rig. You got your wet gear on and what have you. And some of these boats are kind of wet boats, and no matter what you do, you're going to get water down inside there. So you're going to be wet in the cabin, you're going to sleep in your foul weather gear, but right now, really no talk of that. There's storms might threaten, as you heard David Yeoman say later on when we get into the afternoon of tomorrow, but most of those boats are going to be a little bit further north than where those storms are actually going to be getting close to the lakefront here. So there's a lot of things to consider, and there's a lot of really amazing sights along the way. You heard Wynn talking about it when you get up to the Fox and Beaver Islands, the Skillygalee, Wabashants, which everybody just calls Wobbleshanks, which is kind of this part of land that comes out by Gray's Reef when you come around the corner there and you make it into the Straits of Mackinac there when you go past Gray's Reef Light and you come in, and the next thing you see when you come into the wide open Straits of Mackinac is the big Mackinac Bridge, which is absolutely amazing. Next stop, it's going to be the finish line and then on to the island. And it's time to have a drink.
A well-deserved one, right, Chris?
Indeed. You really got to work for your brew.
Boy, it sounds like
by the time you get up there.
No kidding, especially with everything they're going to encounter between now and then. Thank you for that look from above. We want to go back down to the ground to our Jamaica Ponder at the Chicago Yacht Club to get in her final questions as we wrap up our start to the 115th Race to Mackinac. Jamaica?
Yes, no, I am glad that I get to get my last couple in, because you are just a wealth of information.
Oh,
and something that we had talked about previously is the conditions on board. So briefly, walk me through bathrooms, food, clothes, that sort of thing. How are people all living together?
Yeah, you've got a small toilet, a head on the boat. Everyone's got to use it. Some have nice heads, some have buckets. I mean, you have to have it. You've got a stove, right? So every boat has to have a stove.
Okay.
The food can really be quite an operation depending on the boat, right? Some boats are like, no, we're just going to have Uncrustables. Other boats are like, tonight is beef Wellington.
Put me on that boat.
Yeah, right, yeah, no doubt. But you think about it. I told you the boats are leaned over a lot.
Yes.
Like preparing boiling water and stuff like that can be an awful lot. So yeah, so there's often a designated cook. Someone really enjoys doing it,
Right.
as how that happens. But everyone gets a certain amount of gear, a certain amount of space, and you're in a watch system. So typically, like if you have 8 people, maybe 5 are on, 3 are off, and 1 rotates or something, or 4 are on, 4 are off every 4 hours, because you got to keep doing this for 36 or 48 hours, and you can't. Well, you can stay up that long, but it's not smart to stay up that long. Yeah, right.
Well, something that we're anticipating this weekend are storms.
Yeah.
And so I know that this is going to totally muddy up the conditions for some folks. And what is that going to be like on the water?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the important thing to start with is that they're pretty well forecast. I think we heard your meteorologist talk about them, and our meteorologist talked about them also. It looks like there's going to be a mesoscale convective system, if I'm going to dork out, that's going to come through Saturday night and into Sunday morning. And so it's well forecast, this thing, number one, right? So we're ready for it as our team is ready for it, number one. Number two is if you look around the harbor here, more and more of the boats have internet available on them, right? So
yes.
Even in the middle of the lake now, they have a Starlink system, they've got something like that, and so they're going to be watching the radar, they're going to be watching satellite, they're going to be listening to their NOAA radio. We're going to know that it's coming. That helps an awful lot.
Yeah.
Thing number 3 is your team and your preparation, though.
Okay.
Right, back to my point. People that I know I've sailed with, people who know what they're doing, I trust them. We put the program in play. We're able to shorten our sails.
Okay.
Right, so we have less sail area up and we keep the boat under control. We've got small emergency sails called storm trysails if things get really, really bad that we'll put up, right? But we rely on the team, and we generally have a plan that number 1, we do this with the sails. Number 2, we do this with the sails. Probably number 1 is we put our PFDs on, right? Our life jackets on. So we do, but you have a plan, you execute that plan in the storms. And when you do that with a good team, like even when things go sideways, you got your team around you and you really trust and believe in it.
And things can literally go sideways.
They really can. There's some great videos out on YouTube, videos from previous storms, because we get storms in this race a lot, because here we are in the middle of summer in Chicago.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, and you will see boats like they won't flip over because they have a giant lead keel on the bottom of them, so they're stable, they won't flip over. They lay over sideways
I've seen some of the imagery. It's really quite amazing.
Everywhere kind of stuff. I heard you guys mention lightning safety. The lightning safety out there is, like we had a boat get hit by lightning last year or the year before. I can't remember which. It was Madcap is I think the name of the boat. It just took out all their instruments, but the lightning went to ground through the keel, which scary as can be, but everyone was okay. Because safety is so important here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now there's something really cool that you've set up on the boats, and I know you wanted to share with our viewers in case anyone wanted to get first-person experience alongside the boats. Tell us about how we can watch and go along.
Yeah, so one of the things I started doing a number of years ago, and now I'm really excited to do as chair, is every day I'm going to sort of record a video of what's going on. So later tonight on Facebook, on Instagram, I'm going to have a video up that takes the tracker, takes the weather forecast, takes the radar, puts it all together, and what's going on in the race, what to expect in the race, what to be excited about, and I try to think of it from a lay person who maybe is just kind of a casual fan of the race point of view, and then I also try to think of it as someone who knows a little bit about sailboat racing too, kind of thing. So just for people to follow along and be more involved in the race. It's a really fun thing for me to do. So once a day I'll do that, and I encourage people to follow along because it's pretty fun. I'm biased, but it's pretty fun.
No, it sounds very, very fun. So my last question for you is just tell me, how is an event of this size, I know it's been going on for a long time, but how is it possible to keep it going in this day and age? Is there anything special or unique that you guys have to do, that you have to do as chair to maintain the race?
Yeah. Well, I say to people, being the chair of the race, the number one word that I use is I'm humbled to be the chair of the race. And I'm humbled for a number of reasons. Number one is the volunteer organization here. There's 60 people, 20 of them year-round, 40 of them for a month or two over the summer that are just going full steam. The staff here, the leadership here, you can tell that we're very intentional about this sport and bringing people to the water. We've got a great set of sponsors to support the race too. Wintrust has been our supporting sponsor for 10 years. They do a great job in Chicago, and we couldn't do this without them, without the people involved here, and of course without all the racers who keep coming back and trusting us with their family vacation, their 50th Mac race, their something special that's a part of everyone's summer on the Great Lakes. So it takes a lot.
Well, I am so excited for this weekend. I'll be watching the Parade of Boats, which is also how you can watch if you want to get a slice of the race to Mac yourself. Tell us, where can people watch and what time tomorrow?
Yep, that's great. So at the end of Navy Pier, east end of Navy Pier, 10 o'clock, we'll have a couple of people who are Race to Mac committee members, very knowledgeable sailors. One of them's an old goat. Will be out there, and the boats will come by and check in for the race there, and they'll get their name called. You hear a little bit about them, and then you'll see the boat start right off of the Monroe Street Light.
I'm not going to lie, I saw it last year, and it's absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marie?
We so appreciated Jamaica and Wynn, both of you really giving us a great rundown of this race. And Wynn, we'll look for your reports throughout the rest of the weekend on your social media. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching our coverage of the start of the 115th Chicago Yacht Club Race to Mackinac. Keep these sailors, especially those first-timers, in your thoughts over the coming weekend. For Jamaica Ponder at the Chicago Yacht Club and Chris Habermill up in Skywatch, we so appreciate you being with us here on CBS News Chicago, and we will see you next year for the 116th.